What's up, Rice City Church? Welcome to another episode of Digging Deeper. This is episode 1312.
Pretty close.
I'm Anthony, the youth pastor. We have Pete Goodman here, as well as Robert Pedroza, which, if you don't know,
going on, everyone?
Means son of Peter.
Okay.
Pete,
really?
You want to break this down for us?
This is what happens when you let a youth pastor wearing a backwards hat. He's blocking all his blessings, apparently. No, I'm joking. But
I just think that people need to know.
It's messed up. Anyway, we're going to kind of talk today about all things youth ministry. We had an amazing Next Gen Sunday last Sunday. Guys, what did you guys think?
Well, I thought it was amazing, just like you, Robert. No, I really did. Actually, I thought it was a fantastic morning. My daughter was on the stage playing guitar.
It had to be emotional for you.
Yeah, like last year I was able to baptize her, and this year it's awesome. Cool. It's one of the best things about parenting. I think the thing is, just for me personally too, is like, because I'm a musician, seeing her up there is like, I don't know, it's just cool. Even Jean helped out a little bit with some of her chords, and it was neat. It was good seeing all the students on the stage and getting a chance just for the church to hear what's going on. It's not every Sunday needs to be a, exegetical dive into, sometimes it's just like, let's just praise God for what he's doing. And I felt like that was
room for celebration.
The morning, so much of that. So
absolutely
appreciated it.
I had a blast.
I bet you had a blast, man.
I did. It was cool. And what I thought was really cool too is, like, I run into so many people that don't serve in the youth ministry that have, honestly, at times feels like almost no idea what's going on in there. So to be able to present that to all of them was super cool, to then run into them after and they're like, that's incredible to hear that. I can't believe those were kids on stage. All these things.
You seemed excited. I mean, you ran out on stage before the song was even close to being done. So, I mean, if you're listening to this and you would love to just get a laugh in there, go ahead and watch a live stream and watch how quickly
we also learned
Anthony
a little
ran out on
bit
stage.
I think it was the second service. The younger generation learned that Mel Gibson and Mel Brooks are not the same person.
That's true. There's a lot of
I appreciated that.
I'm flawed, and this is just a big gimmick from them, and you just need to ignore it. Because I made the mistake of first service of walking out in the middle of the worship song because I thought it was over, of which I turned and corrected myself. And then second service, I confidently said that Mel Gibson was the star in Spaceballs when it was Mel Brooks all along.
And actually, Mel Brooks wasn't even the star of Spaceballs.
he
had a bit part, but he was. I think he made it.
Either way,
anyway,
pop culture stuff. But
ultimately, the point is, this is why we don't let youth ministry involved in our services.
Once every 3 years.
So we'll be doing this again in 2029.
There we go.
Big update.
Or 27, maybe sooner. But
that.
I don't know. I'm just throwing out random dates for no reason at all. But let's talk about youth ministry, because you may or may not know this, but Anthony is a youth pastor. And here's the deal. Pete, at one point you were a youth pastor too.
I was.
And at one point I was a youth pastor as well. And so
this is an intervention where you and I are going to finally tell Anthony what he's doing wrong.
Yeah. So we're going to tell you
Live.
from our extensive experience in youth ministry. Let us tell you how you can be better. Okay. No, I would love, actually, if we just spent some time just kind of talking story a little bit about all the things that we've experienced and seen in youth ministry. Youth ministry tends to be kind of the part of the church that happens over in the corner sometimes in the youth room, and people don't get to see it or experience it literally a lot of times, right? Yeah. They don't get to see it or experience it. That's why things like Next Gen Sundays are so important, because what it does is it validates that no, youth, if you were between the ages of 12 to 18 and then Next Gen, if you were birthed to 18, like, you are part of this church just as much. And then also, if you are older than 18, then you also can celebrate with the youth and with the kids ministry about what God is doing there.
Exactly.
And it's important in that way. And so I thought, let's spend some time just celebrating together. And so here's my first question.
Cool.
In your course of youth ministry, your experience in it, what is the funniest thing that has ever happened to you or that you've ever witnessed in the context of youth ministry?
Well, I'll start. I've shared this story before, not on the podcast, but it was very early on. So my first experience in youth ministry was, I was an intern, then I was sort of part-time. And it was really my first year. So I had been working with this youth ministry under the youth pastor for maybe 5 or 6 months. And he was actually new to the church as well. And so it was just, you know, a lot of newness, and they decided as sort of a fun thing to plan a trip to Colorado to go skiing. And you know, me and this other guy, Josh, were, you know, I was sort of the guy doing music and Josh was the tech guy, and our youth pastor, Greg, he said, hey, will you guys find a fun way to promote this and just get kids excited about it? I'll try. He literally ended with, I trust you.
That's never good. That's never good.
Famous last
So
words.
Josh and I, and this is probably 2001, maybe 2002. And we were like, well, we're going to Colorado. We lived in Illinois at the time. He's like, what about Dumb and Dumber in the movie? There's this scene where they're driving to Colorado,
both of them,
and they take a wrong turn, and like don't they make a joke about the Rockies not being Rocky? And I hadn't seen the movie in a while, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds funny. And Josh like, well, let's do that, and I was like, cool, done. Well, then like 2 weeks later, it's like the day of youth group, and we're like, wait, did you get that movie? Like, oh, I forgot. And this was back in the day. So one of us, he ran a Blockbuster at the time, rented it.
Wow.
Comes back right in time for youth group to start. And
old.
like cues it up. And
my
I
goodness.
remember before the service, we had a little meeting and our youth pastor goes, so you guys got a video or something? Yeah, I got this clip from Dumb and Dumber. He's like, oh, you guys watched this? Okay. Oh, yeah, it's fine. And neither of us actually watched the clip. And there's this moment in the service where our youth pastor, Greg, is up in front of the entire group of students, probably 100, 150 kids. And Greg goes, I got a huge announcement for you guys. Check out this video. And everything goes black.
This is so good.
And all of a sudden the screen goes up.
Do you know the scene?
Oh, yeah.
And like you see like the front of the car and they're driving. They're like, wait, this is Colorado? And there's I can't repeat the line.
No, you should
but
not.
He goes, that John Denver's full of blank, just outright says it.
Yeah.
In the middle of a
The
youth
room
ministry.
erupts.
Absolutely.
The high schoolers start cheering. They're standing on their chairs. It's like the greatest moment of their lives, hearing somebody
Hearing a cuss
swear
word
in
in
church. And I just remember like I'm in the back of the room with this other
Fired.
guy, and the youth pastor is just staring at us
Just
both.
glaring at you, I'm sure.
I just kind of slink down the wall.
There's another scene in that movie where he goes up to a woman and he's like, I love your skis. Do you own them? And she goes, yeah. He goes, both of them? He goes, yeah. And that's what I thought you were going to talk about. And apparently you went straight for the Colorado John Denver deal.
It was just, now I double check everything to make sure I'm safe. But yeah, the kids, they thought that was the greatest thing ever.
Dude, that's hilarious.
Anthony, it's got to be recent for you.
I mean, for one, if that happened in 2001, I was probably also at Blockbuster getting some sort of Disney VHS because
What,
I
you
was
two?
3 years old.
You're
I
3
was
years old.
3
You
years
were
old
not
at the time.
at Blockbuster. You were at home.
I was getting a VHS of Spirit, the horse movie. But
that seems so recent to me, which is weird.
Yeah, I know.
That seems like a very recent Disney
feels
movie.
foreign to me.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, I have so many, honestly, especially being part of a summer camp. Like, I feel like there's a whole list to choose from. But I think what stands out to me is one of the funniest, probably. I was just serving. Oh no, I guess I was technically like an assistant youth pastor, like in more of a learning role, like just to be a sponge and learn what it meant to be a youth pastor. And I loved the youth pastor that we had. And he had just like kind of announced that he was about to go to Hawaii to be a youth pastor at a church out there and take this opportunity and blah, blah, blah. So we knew that we had like about 2 or 3 months left with him. And one of the things we did probably almost every series is we would use the iMovie app on your phone and record some sort of fun video with like a relevant TV show or trend or movie and just like shoot our own video for it. And the youth group it wasn't super big. Like the summer camp was huge, but then the youth group was maybe like 40, 50 kids. And I remember we shot this video because the biggest movie at the time was Taken with Liam Neeson. You see that movie?
Yes.
And great movie. I mean, there's 3 of them. They're all the same. I don't know how your kid gets taken 3 different times, but yeah. But we had this idea. We're like, what if we shot like a Taken youth cut? Like we recreated the scene where they first break into the house type of feel, except when he's under the bed hiding from everything that's happening. We're like, that's where we promote the invite to youth. And we're like, yeah, that could be good. So we shoot this whole video of him being under our youth pastor's recording. He's under the couch or under the bed or whatever. And he's like, if you're not at youth group, I will find you, and I will
goodness,
get you there.
creepy.
And like we're shooting this, and this whole time we're like, this is hilarious. They're gonna love it. And we played it, and it was just like crickets in the youth group.
Yeah, that is.
And we had a
creepy.
kid. We had a parent call the police because literally one of
I'm
the
being
kids
threatened by
this group of kids. This group of
He's
3
after
kids.
me, Mom.
He's taking me to youth.
They literally made a
Yeah.
hostage video before they kidnapped me. But
Like hold them hostage at a youth group type of
Yes.
feel, which, you know, I don't know how that didn't cross through our heads at all. Like we were just sold on this, like it's trending. And that's probably one of the funniest moments is I remember seeing the group of students like walk to the lobby and in my head being like, oh, they're just going to the bathroom. And then I remember the parents showing up and being in the lobby and thinking it was interesting and weird. And another leader checked in. And then next thing you know, like in the middle of the message, you could hear them in the lobby kind of arguing. And the mom was like, no, the police are on their way right now. The police are on their
right now.
I was like, it's just,
That's a good one.
Yeah,
That's
it was
a good
pretty
one.
tense, but pretty funny.
That is awesome. One time I was, you come up with all these like really creative illustrations during your messages as a youth pastor. And I remember I was talking about putting on the things of Christ. And so I had this game where the kids had to like put on these oversized shirts really fast. And some of them were like wet and some of them were like, partially like frozen a little bit. But then I had one that was like completely frozen like a block, and their idea was like to get it all undone, and the whole point was something I don't know. I was young, but the whole
Putting
point
on the things of Christ.
I don't know.
I'm sorry, this story is interesting.
Yes.
But the theology is
It's
what's
messed
thrown.
up.
No,
It's messed up.
That's
The
spot on.
attributes,
That's-
putting on the attributes
That's
of
the most youth pastor thing I've ever heard.
Yes, it
I don't know.
was.
I was talking about
I
putting
know.
on the things of Christ or something. It was a game.
it was very much youth pastor.
You know that verse where Jesus puts on the frozen shirt of God.
Man, it was cold, but so it was like completely frozen, and they were trying to they had to get it undone because it's in a big block of ice basically, and then try to put it on.
I've seen that.
And the whole point was kind of like, the more that you stay out in the cold and, you're influenced by the world.
I'm really
and it
curious
comes
what
to-
the point was.
It really wasn't. Youth ministry where the sermon illustrations don't really have a point.
We worried
never
about
makes sense.
points. We just worried about gimmicks and having fun.
Just gimmicky. But, and so here's the deal. So there's a point in the message when I was like, they're trying to do it and stuff like that. And they're trying to put it on. This is, it's a pretty big youth ministry. It's at a big church here in San Diego. And they're trying to do it. And then, they're like, we can't do it. And I'm like, okay, well, you guys are all done. Take a seat. I was like, and then one of the kids starts walking off with the shirt. And I'm like, no, here, throw me the shirt. And cause I wanted to use it to like show like, when you stick in the world, you end up getting frozen and you can't put on, the things,
The frozen shirt of
The things of Christ.
the frozen shirt of Jesus. And,
John, can we entitle this entire episode The
Things of
Things of Christ?
things of Christ.
If you're taking notes today, go ahead and write down the things of Christ.
It's so good. So here's it gets better. So the kid throws it to me. It's ice. So I'm trying to catch it. It slips right through my hands and it hits me where no guy wants to be hit on stage in front of all these kids. And it hit me real good. I hit the floor. Like I was on stage and I hit the floor for probably what felt like 5 minutes. I'm sure it was 30 seconds, but like I was legitimately out for the count, and the kids are dying laughing because I just got hit where sensitive
That's when
region
you
for
say,
guys.
And-
if I had the full armor of Christ on, that wouldn't have happened.
If I had the things of
Wrapping around. This is why you need the belt,
the belt of truth, the cup of protection.
stuff like that. So that was a pretty ridiculous story moment for me as well.
Digging deeper.
I just picture John Cumby watching this and being so
Hi,
upset
John.
at us.
John,
Sorry.
no,
Go ahead and tune
why?
out the
Poor
rest.
guy. He just got called out. Anyway, well let's move on. Let's talk about now like the craziest moments. I know that this is kind of related, but we talked about the funny moments. But crazy can kind of be just when you just went and did something, or when something was just this insane happening, basically, of what happened to youth ministry. Youth ministry is chock full of moments where you're like, that was crazy, whether it's a bear chasing you in the wilderness at Forest Home Camp, Anthony, or whether it's, something else going on. But tell me, what are some crazy experiences that you've had in the course of youth ministry?
Man, another long list. I got to think here specifically.
You're talking like good crazy or just weird crazy?
Either or. Probably weird crazy. We'll get to the cool stuff soon.
Man, I don't know. I would say I have a lot of like silly things that happen, but nothing like just wild, crazy kind of thing. My first job as a youth pastor full time, I moved to Wichita, Kansas, just married Julie. I was actually following a guy who was, and I don't want to like make it sound like I have anything against him. Like he actually, I love the guy, like loved him. He was a very like, I mean, just fun, crazy, wild guy who didn't consider rules very much. And like, so following his footsteps there's almost like we probably need to calm down in some of these things you guys are doing. I remember the year before when they had gone to camp, somebody had called the number of the church to say, hey, I'm behind one of your vans, and they're driving 109 miles an hour with kids in it.
Oh no.
And so like some of that stuff was so like I almost felt like when I took over, like I had to like be like a bit more responsible. And I was older. I was probably 30 at the time. So I wasn't doing quite the crazy stuff. But there was one night where we were doing this like guys' night, and they had what do you call them? They're like they're the big yoga balls, and you're supposed to like stretch on them or something.
Yeah.
You know, I was having the students like run at each other and see who could make the other person bounce far away. And they're having fun. And then one of them's like, Pete, you do it. I'm like, guys, I'm not doing it. You're all 50 pounds. Like, come on. And this one kid, his name was Connor. He was a good kid, but he was just this little trash talker. And he was just going at me. And finally, bring it, Connor. And he runs at me full speed. And I didn't run at him. I stood still. I'm holding this big, huge bouncy ball. He runs at me, and I just kind of like slightly like push it out at him, and he hits me. His entire body flips in the air. He lands on his head on concrete. And I kid you not, this is the middle of the night. It's like 2 a.m. And his eyes are just like moving really fast. His fingers like did the Tua Tagovailoa thing. And I'm like, I think I just killed somebody. And like he started drooling. And I was like thought I was like done. Like my life was over. I just killed a student. We called the paramedics, and by the time they got there, he had kind of woken up. He had a concussion, but
I'll say.
Yeah, it was like, I remember just feeling like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
Oh my goodness.
And all the kids, when he woke back up, and it probably took like 15 or 20 minutes for him to kind of like, he had a headache, be like, I'm awake. All the kids were like, my turn. I was like,
Mr. Pete.
That was awesome. Like, no, okay. So yeah, I don't know. That was, try to avoid those things as much as possible.
Yeah, try not to get kids hurt.
Yeah.
I was actually, I would go to church here and there growing up, and I remember there was like a lock-in, and I just remember thinking, okay, all night at this church locked
lock-ins.
in.
Yeah,
and so
the worst.
it was at this local church, and I remember there was this guy, the pastor's name was Tim, and I'll never forget. And he decided that he was going to go and like sleep in his office for part of the night, which is a bad idea. And so
just leave the kids.
Well, no, so he just he's like,
what a leader.
So I decided to take the reins, and I decided to lead everyone in basically barricading him into his office. And we did such a good job that there was like a sliding glass window that was like, behind his desk, but the door was so like he couldn't get out of his office at all. And so he literally had to break the window to get through. And then in the meantime, we also
were you a student at the time, or were you like a leader at the time?
I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
And so we literally rubbed Crisco all over his car as well. And then we found out that he was borrowing the car. So I was not the youth pastor's favorite kid at that point that showed up for that lock-in. So that was a fun thing kind of on the other side of youth ministry.
Being a kid.
Man, just being the kid that the youth pastor's pulling his hair out about. So that was fun times.
I never had a youth ministry phase really, so it was short when I did.
Well, mine was short.
Like being a youth student, I mean.
Yeah.
But I've had, again, tons of crazy moments, especially being part of a summer camp. So I'll do a summer camp one for this. But we did this game, total youth name for this game, but it was called Slaughter Hill. Slaughter Hill.
Did you guys make a video? I will find you. If you don't come.
I will find you.
Come to Slaughter Hill.
What
kind of youth
I have a certain
did you go
set of
to?
skills.
It was charismatic. Okay. It was charismatic.
That's awesome.
But here's what the game was, and this is not an exaggeration. We took all of the old camp mattresses from the 80s and 90s that were going to be replaced, and we kept them all because someone had the idea before I was at the college that we might be able to use these mattresses for a game somehow. So when the time comes for summer camp, like the team leaders, which was my role, long story short, you'd create the games for the summer. You'd have to test them, get them approved, blah, blah, blah. Well, this game Slaughter Hill was all these old mattresses. We would start wide. We came up with like a whole algorithm for how to stack the mattresses. And it ended up being a hill that was 17 and a half feet tall.
Out of mattresses, huh?
Out of old square
You had an algorithm.
mattresses.
He had the things of Christ.
Yes, both gimmicks, if you ask me. But either way, we built this like hill out of all these mattresses, and then at the very top of the hill, because it wasn't even, we randomly had a bunch of old wrestling mats. Like when you go to the gym, you know, the wrestling room, like the mats are like rubbery,
Yeah, I know what
cushiony.
you're talking about.
So we laid those over the top to even it out, and then we'd strap a tarp and wrap a tarp around it.
It's a lot of preparation that went into this.
It didn't
actually.
look the best, and it functioned, you know, a 6 out of 10.
What is the point
A lot of
of
health codes
Slaughter
work.
Hill?
So here's how it worked.
Okay.
It'd be 2 teams at a time. They'd blow the whistle, and the teams would have to run up on the hill, and they'd have 2 minutes. You could push people off, but you couldn't throw them off. And whoever had the most people on the hill at the end of the timer won the game.
That sounds terrible.
Well, week 1 of camp is
Was Pete there with a huge ball, just launching kids off the hill?
What did you think
That's
was
my
going to
question.
happen?
Week 1 of camp is always interesting because there's a lot of excitement, but you learn a lot of areas you need to be better at. And one of the things we realized we didn't do well was explain the rules. So we forgot to say that you could push off, but you had to stay grounded. Like you were supposed to be basically on your knees or your hands on the top. Like you can't like just stand up fully. And we forgot to mention that. So the first round of the game, this like big beefy football kid's like tossing everyone off.
This is 17
He
and a half
like
feet
rips
tall.
his shirt off. Yeah, literally 17 and a half feet. But again, it's not straight up
tracking,
and down.
I'm
It's like a
tracking.
hill.
Okay.
With mattresses, which we thought were safe. And he's
What was
a
at the
big
bottom of
football
the
kid.
hill?
He rips his shirt. He's like tossing it out. The crowd's
rips his
half
shirt like
the
Hulk
crowd's
Hogan?
like half the crowd is like green team, green team, green team. And then the other half's like red team. It's like loud. We're trying to be like, what's going on? This is crazier than we thought. And this other shorter, less muscular kid somehow just sprints up the mountain behind him as the timer's like 5, 4, 3, grabs him from behind and full on German suplexes
No
him
way.
from the top of the hill. And they both hit.
Why's it gotta be German?
There was no more red team, green team chance. It's just dead silence. Everyone goes, oh. And they, like, the kid that slams him stands up, kind of trips to the side and falls. And the kid that gets slammed is just not moving. And I'm not even kidding you. He goes into like cardiac arrest.
What?
Yeah, like from when he got hit, he wasn't getting up, and everyone's like, is he unconscious? So we get the nurses. Everyone runs up. He's like twitching on the ground.
We're like,
we're
like scaring parents right now.
literally,
Yes.
literally, like, yeah, this
Should we talk
doesn't
about
happen
Chubby
here.
Bunny
This is the
next?
old days. Nice. But they like these ambulances pull up and everything, and I'll tell you, there's not a more humbling like moment that brings you back to reality than when they're like, "What happened here?" And you're like, "We just were playing a game of Slaughter Hill, and
Slaughter Hill. I mean, what could go wrong?
thought someone would be slaughtered." Anyways, the
Is he
kid's
okay?
okay.
He's
The
okay?
kid's okay.
Oh
and
my goodness.
his team pulled off the win, which it meant a lot to him. He was back at camp the next day and literally was
He was
like,
back at camp the next day?
yeah, and it was like a Netflix
After
documentary.
cardiac arrest?
He showed up and everyone's with him, and he's like, "Did y'all pull it off?" And they're like, "Yeah, we won." And he's like, "Red team." I was like,
This is the guy that ripped
that
the
was
shirt
like,
off?
yeah, like had like a heart attack or whatever.
What was at the bottom of Slaughter Hill?
Some mattresses that would go out. These are camp mattresses, so they're
Okay.
that
All right,
thick,
all right,
mainly wood, thin layer of
80%
Comforting
foam,
cotton.
20% staph infection.
So keep this in mind if you're listening to this. We are sharing the craziest stories
Yes.
that
These
we've
aren't-
experienced or that we can
don't happen
remember.
regularly. They don't happen
Not
regularly.
necessarily the regular stories, okay?
Yeah.
So
And I have vowed to never play Slaughter Hill again. So your
that's a
kids are
good
safe
vow.
with me.
I would
I've renamed it.
encourage that. I've renamed it. That's terrible.
Bear Hill.
That's not. What did you call it? Care Bear?
Every time you get to the top, you earn a new thing of Christ.
Oh man,
That you get to put on.
this is the most ridiculous. Digging deeper, but we are having a great time, and I hope you are too. I hope this is bringing you a lot of joy. So, speaking of joy, let's talk about the coolest moments. Like, what are the moments where you realize, man, this is what it's all about. This made it all worth it. Even the moments where I almost killed a kid by accident, or something hilarious happened that was probably self-deprecating in our decision-making processes and things like that. Put on the things of Christ. But whatever else, what are the things that you've experienced where you say, man, the Lord moved despite me, despite everything else? The Lord moved, and it was amazing. It was incredible. Tell me about those.
One of my coolest moments was I was not actually the youth pastor. I was the worship leader. We were doing a camp in Kentucky. We brought our students to it, and our band practiced in the afternoon for the night session. And the camp started on Monday. My band went down on Sunday. I think I even on like Saturday to get set up and get ready for Sunday night. And on Sunday morning, we were like, let's just find a church here in this little small Kentucky town. And we did. And I remember going to the church service, and the band started playing a song I'd never heard before, but it just resonated with me. It was based on Revelation. It was just like, holy is the Lord God Almighty kind of thing. And I went up to the worship leader afterwards. I'm like, that's a cool song. Can I get the lyrics? Didn't know who sang it, didn't wrote it, never only heard the band play it the one time. And our band like took it and kind of started tinkering with it. And let's try and throw it in. And I think on like Tuesday or Wednesday of that week, we're like, let's try this. Let's just see what happens. And I even had to like remember how it went because I'd only heard it the one time.
Yeah.
And so we get together in the afternoon, like 2:00, and we're in this big space in a college in Kentucky, and the kids are off having free time. And so we're on the stage practicing. Let's just try this song. And there's 6 or 7 of us. And when we practice, we kind of practice in a circle so we can all see each other and talk. So I'm looking at the band, and the room is behind me, and it's empty. There's no one in the room other than the sound techs. And we start tinkering with this song. And to be honest, what happened next is almost a little bit of a blur. But we like to say that God showed up is just like, there's no other way to say it. Like this, it was just like, I was having this moment with this song, and like, we were just practicing it. And I think we were actually making up the melody because I didn't quite remember exactly how it went. And we just started making it up, and we just started playing, and we're just doing this. And I remember it's not a long song. Like you can get to the whole thing in a couple minutes, but I bet we played it for 15 minutes and the band is just like, nobody's talking. We're just singing the song. And I came to this moment where I'm like, we've been singing this for a long time. And I kind of stop, and I notice something. I turn around, there's about 100 kids in the auditorium just spread across with their faces on the ground, praying for each other, crying out to God. And like, it wasn't a service. Like they were off playing basketball and just heard the music and started. And so we're like, all right. So I just turned around and I just started playing a different song.
That's awesome.
And for the next like 2 hours, like this room is just full of kids worshiping. And at one point I remember like, I like put my guitar down and let another guy lead a song. And I'm gonna go pray for these guys. And I got off the stage, and like the power of God just like
awesome. Yeah.
I just started walking up to him, and all of a sudden these really kids started crying and falling down and like praying for each other, and they all skipped dinner. Like nobody left. The service started at 7, and the kids had been in there since like 2 PM. And I think we were in there like 10 o'clock at night that night, just praying and worshiping.
That's awesome.
The memories of retreats and camps are so powerful. And that was, I had a few of those where like just getting away, leaving your normal, getting around other kids who want to seek the Lord is one of the coolest things about youth ministry. It's without a doubt the thing I miss the most. Those moments of kids just being vulnerable and real and opening themselves up to what God wants to do. Yeah. You don't get that as much in the adult services, unfortunately.
We build walls as we get older. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, it's powerful. Yeah. It's really powerful.
It's awesome.
How about you, Anthony?
Kentucky, man. A lot of things going on there, huh?
Murray,
must
Kentucky.
Be anointed.
A side note, my first experience going to a Waffle House.
Oh.
And I remember going there.
We're on the cool stories, not the crazy ones.
We're 2 in the morning.
I love
2 in the morning. The waitress walks up to us, and she's like, what are y'all here for? Like, oh, we're doing you're a band. That's cool. And
just like a Waffle House.
And she goes, and I'm like, she's like, what should we get? She's like, well, what do you want? And our drummer was like, what are grits? She goes, grits? You ain't never had grits?
Dude,
oh my
Lord,
so you got to get some grits. And we're like, all right, we'll try them. So grits. And I go, so Murray, Kentucky, how long have you lived here? She goes, about 4 years. And I was like, where were you at before that? She goes, Vegas. I was like, hold on a second, time out.
Wait.
Las Vegas? You became a hick with that accent in 4 years? That's incredible.
Dude, a Waffle House.
How did that connect?
She just became not at all.
No, that's great. That was good. I like
Here's
it.
the way it
Great
connects.
story.
You see, a person becomes like their environment, and you take on the world in which you put yourself in.
The things around
and
you.
so if you
things of
become
Christ.
like other people in Kentucky, you'll begin to speak like them. And if you put on the things of Christ rather than
it.
the things of this world, you'll become more like Jesus and take on his characteristics.
And less like people from
You'll
Kentucky.
start to talk
It was
like
the
Jesus
characteristics of Christ,
more
is the
than
idea.
the world
More
that
than
wears frozen
that was the
t-shirts.
message, but anyway, whatever.
This is the most
Amen.
off the rails podcast that's ever
Tell
been
us your
done.
cool story, Anthony.
I just want you guys to know when I saw the three of us in the same group chat for Digging Deeper, I saw this coming a mile away. A mile away. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a ton, and I'm just gonna do the most recent, which is not.
Yes.
I'm not just saying this because I'm employed and work at Rise City or I serve at Rise City, but what happened at high school camp this year is legitimately unlike anything I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Not just as a believer and a follower of Jesus myself, but as a pastor, as a person, I've never seen and felt God as tangibly and as clearly as I did at high school camp.
So good.
And what's incredible about it is that it really did feel like it was just the beginning for everyone. And I mean, it's crazy. Like it's like in my head, there's like what happened at high school camp was what I want to happen in every kid's life at some point, every student's life at some point. And I've prayed for it. I do things intentionally to try and like teach and build for moments like that and give them an opportunity in an environment where they can encounter God the way they did. But normally, and you guys know this, you're youth pastors, normally it's not one in bulk. Two, normally it's like sometimes it doesn't last, especially big camp moments. Like they're impactful for, it might happen in bulk, but then one or two kids might hold tight to those, but then it kind of fades away as the camp high dies down and stuff like that. But to see what God did in like every single kid's life, like we took 37 high school students to camp, and
Which is amazing by itself.
It's not an exaggeration. Literally all 37 would say that they had a relationship defining moment with God.
That's fantastic.
Whether that be, I need to get baptized, I need to accept Jesus, I need to quit playing games, I need to commit. And one of the coolest things that I think I saw, and Brandon talked about this on Sunday, but I'll just give more insight. But a student was like, went for a walk on his own, was just kind of praying, thinking about stuff. And the root of it all was he had connected so much and had so much happen in the first 2 days of camp, but that by day 3, he had kind of parked, his brain had kind of parked on the realization that, oh man, I don't get this forever. Like I go back to my life. I go back to school. I go back to my family. I go back to my friends. I go back to everything. And so instead of embracing the last few days, he kind of just took a moment, just process. What does this look like? And when we all found him and realized he wasn't missing, it was just kind of me and him at first talking. And it didn't feel like anything big had happened or anything like that. And then the feeling of like, I hugged him and we both started breaking down. I was angry because I was like, do not, like, I mean, not angry, but I'm like, dude, I literally just probably ran 4 miles in the mountains looking for you. Like, did not stop running because we were like, literally, they were about to click a red button that was going to signal a missing camper that shuts down the camp and like turns into this whole security thing.
Wild.
They haven't had to do it at the summer camp in X amount of years, all this, and it's about to happen because of Rise City Youth. And I was just like, oh, everything's going wrong. And then on top of that, Brandon is supposed to show up this night. So he shows up, big old smile, him and Jamie waving. And I'm like, he goes, what's up? I said, there's a missing student. I gotta handle this. Go inside. I was like, let me handle this. So I'm like, I'm fired after this probably. All this.
Oh my goodness.
And so anyways, I see him and I'm hugging him and like, he's completely fine. He's like, I'm just going for a walk. I was like, dude, he's like, why are you out of breath? I was like, I've been looking for you. I was like, you can go for a walk. Just tell someone you're going for a walk. Yeah. And like we hug. And as soon as we hug, like I just felt like I needed to pray for him. And so I just started praying for him and praying specific things, which I'll keep between him and I. And as I was praying, I could just feel like like the presence of God, like I said, but I started to feel like I don't even like so tangibly, like the Holy Spirit was just like, don't let him go right now. So I just kept hugging him. And it was like, as we're hugging, and I hope like if he sees this, he knows like this isn't, he just said, I don't feel like I have anyone in my life. And as he said that, I'm not even kidding you. You could hear and feel the footsteps of people probably 50 feet away come up to the edge, because we were in this giant grass field, and we could feel like people around us. And I kind of turn, and it's the rest of our youth group and leaders are all standing at the edge of the field, just like kind of looking like ready to go. And I looked at one of them, and I just went, and they all full on sprinted at us. Like not walked up, not they were not ginger, full on sprinted and started just everyone, all 37 and the leaders were just tight, not like spaced out. Everyone was just hugging and started praying. Not once did I say, we're going to start praying right now. We're going to do this. It was crazy. But as they're running in, like I just told him, I said, look up. And when he looked up, it's just 36 other kids full on sprinting for this guy that they might have known their whole life. They might have just met him. Who knows? But what I did know is that every single one of them was there for him, and that every single one of them was like, they didn't care about emotions. They didn't care about look. They didn't care about summer camp, which was pretty cool because it was about to be service and we were literally like 30 minutes late. And just this moment of everyone hugging, it was like a total just spirit-led moment in everyone's shoes. Like,
it's huge.
And so I just started praying over everyone, and like it was insane. And so that moment was something that to me is like, I'm honestly still kind of wrestling with it. Like what else is there that I'm learning from this, God? And what's so cool is, one, I think that student that happened for specifically, I know he was impacted by that, and it's something he'll always hold on to. But also, and I told them this, there were other kids in that circle who felt the same way, you know, and what God did for that student specifically, it was just as freeing for some of the other students in there
to be part of that.
And too. so it's just, I've never seen anything like it. And then to go to service, like we get there and it's like hype song, everyone's jumping, not a single, all of us walk to like all the students, not even leaders, all the students immediately walk to the front and just start hugging for each other and praying for each other one-on-one.
It's awesome. The
service ended and no one cared that Brandon was there, like not a knock to Brandon or anything. Like they were just so locked in, like in the message, they were like zombies. And as soon as the message ended, everyone broke out. Our students just immediately started going one by one, praying for each other. And I mean like, not just like hugs and tears and emotions. Like, I want to pray for you. And when I'm done, I'm going to pray for you. And when I'm done praying for you, I'm going to go pray for her. And when I'm done praying for her, we're going to go together and we're going to pray for them. And it was just like this, like
kind of a movement.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. And I've seen, like, we're still seeing the fruits of that moment.
It's huge.
And so that's for me is by far the coolest, craziest thing I've been a part of.
That's the power of it all. You know, like I think that we can think of youth ministry as being this kind of like, you know, it's something we got to have as a church.
Yeah.
But life change happens in these pivotal years. And it's not just high school, it's middle school too, you know? And I know a lot of times we're kind of like, well, the change and transformation, the big moments happen in high school, but it happens in middle school just as much as well. And so, man, it almost feels silly to tell a story after that, but I'll share a story that I experienced as well. Where when I was a youth pastor, we used to take the high schoolers to different countries. They would take them to Dominican Republic and stuff like that. We did a mission trip every year with them. But the middle schoolers we didn't do anything for. So I decided, let's do a domestic mission trip. And so I had a friend who went and planted a church in Idaho. It's Bonners Ferry, Idaho, really up north tip of Idaho. And so I was like, we'll take one of the church vans and take whichever kids will come. And so we filled up the van with like 16 kids or whatever you could fit in a van or whatever. Well, it was one of those 18 passenger vans, right? And so it was like stuff like that. Well, the church gave me this van that was just breaking down on me the entire time. And like literally the radiator was
about right.
It was like blowing up the whole
time. You
time.
mean to tell me a church van wasn't working properly? What?
We start going through Arizona, right? And it's like over 100 degrees. I can't turn on AC because the van is overheating. I'm having to pull over. We would literally stop at gas stations, buy bags of ice, and I was just pouring them on top of the radiator, which I'm sure was making it worse, but it's probably not good automobile advice, by the way. But we were just doing whatever we could to try to get to Idaho. And so we're doing this whole thing, and I'm watching the temperature gauge, and it keeps on overheating, and the kids are in there, and their windows are down. They're sweating like crazy because it's 100 degrees in the middle of Arizona in the summer. And And I literally just told the kids, I was like, it's a bright, sunshiny day, not a cloud in the sky. But we're stuck on the side of the road waiting for the van to cool down again, trying to pour ice on the radiator, trying to do whatever we can. And I just tell the kids, I'm like, you know what? I was like, this might sound silly, but I feel like we should just pray and ask God for rain. Because if it starts raining, then it'll actually cool it down, and we can probably get through this section of the hottest area of Arizona, and it may not be overheating so much. And so they're like, that's weird, but okay. And so these middle schoolers, they just start praying for rain. And one of the other leaders that's with us, he starts leading. His name is Josh, and he starts praying with them as well. And they're praying for rain, and everyone's kind of like, this is weird, but we'll just do it. I'm not even joking. Like, we start going, and maybe 15 minutes later, it was 100 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, blue skies, bright sunshiny day. It starts to pour rain.
Wow.
And it was one of the most emotional moments for those kids, because they saw that God hears them and God loves them and God will answer them, even in the miraculous ways that they don't expect. And I remember they were like so sweaty and hot, and everyone had the windows full down, and everyone was just like, woo, just freaking out about it, and so much joy. And it literally set the tone for the moment that we got to Idaho and started serving in a significant way.
It's awesome.
And that trip was one of those things where people got connected a lot, like you did, or what you experienced with the high schoolers, where those kids, they felt alone. They expressed a lot of depression. Some of them confessed to things like cutting and things like that they were dealing with and hiding from other people on that trip. And God restored them, but then also put them in a connection and community with other people and other peers. And that carried on for years and years after that as well. And so pretty amazing the things that God does through youth ministry, and just guys like you guys just being faithful and being goofy sometimes and having fun and doing crazy things. But really it comes down to, we want to see God move. And so
definitely.
Absolutely. Well, anything else you guys want to share?
Man, I'm just encouraged. I'm encouraged by what God has done, what he's still doing.
Yeah.
It's been a while for Rise, as we've struggled a little bit off and on to try to create an environment for our students. And, we've had some moments, and then, I don't know, I'm just excited to see God move.
Absolutely. Me too.
I'm excited to see, and I've mentioned this before, but like, I am, as a person, I'm this like just logical, ideas thinker, prove it kind of person. But when I talk to other people who are even like me, and they're like, well, give me all the reason and the logic, and I inevitably come back to, you know what? The truth is, I don't follow Jesus because of my logic. I experienced him.
Yeah.
Like at like camps and things. Like, I've met Jesus in powerful ways that you can't. I heard you last night. We were talking to somebody. You said the only thing you can't deny is Jesus, because you met him.
Yeah.
And I want that for my children so much. I want that for all of our youth, not to just be like, hey, we've got a good Bible teacher, or, we've got a good program here that'll keep your kids safe.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I want kids to meet Jesus in a way that I can't explain this away. I don't have all the answers, but I can't explain this away. And there's no choice I have but to follow him, because I've met him face to face. And so
praise the Lord.
I want to see that. And I want to see that more than just our students. I want to see that for our whole church.
Our church. Yeah.
I want our men's and women's retreats to be just as impactful as the youth retreats and other things we do, where we meet Jesus. And I'm encouraged, by Ben and others who are leading us in those places. And so, I think it's good what God is doing. It could be a part of it. So appreciate you guys.
When it comes down to it, I think the youth could set an example for the believers.
Sure.
And listen, if you're listening to this and you're an adult like we claim to be, then listen, I would say, don't dismiss what God's doing in the youth. Maybe even be inspired by it and get your life engaged into it. So cool. All right. Well, thanks for joining us on this episode of Digging Deeper. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.